bring in Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live co-host and, of course, contributor to Football Night in America. Mike's been writing a lot about the latest gambling investigation with the NFL investigating the Colts defensive back Isaiah Rodgers for gambling violations. How did this come about? How did it come to the NFL's attention, Mike?
Well, like all of these cases, Dan, what happens is when someone uses their phone, and George Orwell had it right, sort of. Big Brother is out there, but we're all carrying Big Brother around everywhere we go. So even though Isaiah Rodgers reportedly had an account that was in the name of an associate, he's using his phone. Everywhere he goes, that phone is pinging. And ultimately, the information flows back to the sports books, and they have an obligation under Indiana law to figure out whether or not someone within the Colts organization is involved in sports wagering, and one thing leads to another, and they figure it out. And that's the one big message that the league, the teams, everyone needs to send to the players. You will get caught. You're not going to get away with this, and the consequences are dire. Dan, it astounds me that that message hasn't gotten through to the players the way it needs to. And if it has and they're still doing it, boy, that's a hell of a problem for the league.
What stands out in this story?
Well, the notion that there's evidence he bet on Colts games. Now, did he bet on the Colts to win, to cover, to win and not cover, to lose? Who knows? And people are already looking for evidence of maybe him half-assing it on a play because, he bet against the Colts. Well, let's wait for the evidence. I hope there's full transparency so we know what he bet on. Did he bet on the Colts? Did he bet on the Colts to win, to cover, to lose, whatever? That's what stands out to me because that crosses a new bridge for the NFL. The way I read his statement, he seems to think this is just a situation where I'll take my medicine like Calvin Ridley did and then I'll be back. I think if he bet on the Colts, there's a good chance the commissioner, in his unilateral and complete discretion, says, you're done. You're gone. You're never playing in the NFL again.
I brought this up last hour. I don't know if the NFL brought Calvin Ridley to the rookie seminar or had him do a Zoom for all of these teams to really understand. He bet $1,500 and it cost him $11 million in salary, which is one of the worst beats you could ever have in gambling.
Yeah.
That you would, like, baseball tried to do this with Pete Rose and he wouldn't do it. And therefore it cost him the Hall of Fame. Calvin Ridley's coming back with Jacksonville. I don't know what the NFL is doing with their seminars with rookies or with players just to update them every single year on, is there anything that's changing with gambling? Are you allowed to gamble? What are you allowed to gamble on? What are you not allowed to gamble on? Do we know what the NFL is doing to kind of protect itself?
Well, yeah, the NFL's policy is very simple. For all non-players, you can't wager on any sports. For players, you can wager on sports other than NFL football, but if you do it on team premises or on team business, it's a violation of the policy, which makes no sense, Dan. You could stand outside the front door to the facility. Pardon me, somebody's at the door. My dog's reacting. You can stand outside the door to the facility like someone standing outside the door to my house right now, and you can bet on baseball, on basketball. But the minute you walk through the door, it's somehow an affront to the integrity of the game. That makes no sense. That's one of the problems. The policy has flaws. The policy has issues. And then the communication of it, whatever they're doing, they don't do a rookie symposium anymore because it costs too much money because, times are tough now for the NFL. But coaches get in players' faces all the time. How hard is it to go player to player and say, look, you hear about all these other policies and you need to follow them, but this is the one that can derail your career. Here's what you can't do. Don't do it or you're done and they'll catch you. Why aren't they doing it? Of all the coaches in the NFL, Dan Campbell would be the most likely to do it. He's got 4 going on 5 guys now suspended. So something is falling through the cracks. As one coach said to me not long ago, if you got enough players bringing home F's on the report card, it's a problem with the teacher, not the student. So I think the league has a problem. The teams have a problem. And they need to get the players to better understand what they can and can't do.
Talking to Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live co-host, the show that precedes ours with Chris Sims on Peacock. The Bills Stadium. Are we building stadiums and you get a Super Bowl when you build a stadium, Mike?
Well, if it's got a dome, yes. I'm not aware of the open air outdoor stadium quid pro quo. Pittsburgh didn't get one. Now, Pittsburgh would have an issue with hotel rooms. New Jersey got one, but that was the one-time experiment out in the weather, and they got lucky. They missed it by just like a day on each side, a snowstorm. So if it was domed, yes. I don't think Buffalo's going to get one just because they're building a new stadium with state money. But if it's a warm weather location or a dome, then they find a way to give you a Super Bowl for your trouble.
But if they had a dome, would Buffalo get a Super Bowl?
You've got the issues with hotel space. Where would everybody stay? Remember in Jacksonville all those years ago, they had to bring in cruise ships to make up for the lack of hotel rooms. That's one of the big problems to having a Super Bowl. Maybe they'll get a draft now. I don't know. It seems like everybody's going to get a draft at some point, so that's not some big thing. But this was more about a horribly outdated stadium that needed to be replaced. And the bottom line is this. If the state and local authorities in Buffalo and Western New York aren't going to pay a big piece of the bill, there's going to be some other community that will. That's why the Raiders aren't in Oakland. It was never going to happen in Oakland. And here's Las Vegas with $750 million in free money. There's always going to be another community out there that's willing to pay the money to attract a team. And that's the quiet leverage that every team has over the city it's currently in when it's time to build a new stadium.
Here we are, first week in June. What's next on the NFL offseason calendar?
Well, the mandatory minicamps are starting to open. That's the closest thing to real football practice until training camp. And, you kind of keep one eye open on the possibility that somebody's going to get injured. DeAndre Hopkins, he's been out there for a week now. I think he wants way much more than what anyone is willing to pay him. That's why no one has signed him. Maybe he sits and waits for the inevitable injury. Maybe he waits into training camp. Then all of a sudden, somebody's going to have an urgency to sign him. But that's the big name that's out there that we're all waiting to see where he's going to land. But I think the fact that it's been 11 days since we knew he was going to be cut, that tells me his number is a lot higher than whatever teams are willing to do.
Why is Aaron Rodgers still trying to litigate is too strong a word, but he's trying to negotiate this with the media of what happened and why he's not the bad guy with Green Bay? Why is this still a topic, or he allows it to be a topic?
Sometimes you can be so smart, Dan, that you outsmart yourself. And I think that's what he did here. He tried to set up a narrative that when the season ended in 2022 and he left, everything was fine. We want you back. We want you back. Then he goes into his dark closet and he comes out and he finds out they're shopping him. Well, we had to make that narrative work. And once it started to show that maybe it didn't work, that's when it becomes, oh, they tried to call me. Well, I only have one bar on my phone. I have no bars on my phone. So and it all just began to crumble. So now he's chasing a narrative that was flimsy from the get-go as it falls apart. And he feels compelled to now say, oh, wait, they decided to trade me because I didn't return their phone calls. Well, I only talk to the people I like anyway. I mean, the bottom line is it was dysfunctional. He didn't want to be there. They had gotten to the point where they were ready to move on from him. But he feels compelled to come out of this as the victim. That I didn't do anything wrong. I have no responsibility for this. Everybody's got responsibility for this one, team and player. And I don't know why, as he moves forward with the Jets, he wants to do this. But, Dan, for the Jets, the warning is tread lightly, because all this stuff he's saying about the Packers now, who knows? In a year or two, he may be saying it about you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Dan.
Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live co-host, and, of course, NBC Football Night in America.